So while we're just letting the last folks in and getting started, it would be awesome if you could introduce yourselves with the chat board so that we can just get a better sense of who else is here today. If you're a student, maybe you could just note your which degree program you're in and class year. And if you're an alum or professional, maybe you could just note your title and company in the chat box. And we'll give everybody just a minute to do that before I carry on. Awesome, this is great. So one of the advantages of doing this virtually is that we can have alums and professionals from all over the country joining us today, whereas we normally host this event in person and focus on the local audience. So that's really nice this year. Let me, before I introduce our panelists and our topic, I mention a few of the housekeeping items that you're probably all used to by now, having done so much Zooming over the last week or two. First is we are recording. So you will, if you miss any part of the discussion, you can watch it later. Also know that if you're joining us by video, your image will be on the recording as well. So consider that. Also, please keep your microphones muted, of course, during the conversation. We will save time at the end for Q&A, and I'd like to try to do Q&A with the audio if you can use the raise hand function in Zoom. But you can also type in questions in the chat box, and we will try to pick and choose the ones that seem the most relevant for our panelists today. Obviously, women in energy is a big topic. There's so much we could talk about. We may not get to everyone's question, but we will do our best. So I think those are all the technical questions. Is everyone, do we have any technical issues, Jacob? Or are we good to go? Okay, great. So let me just say a few words about our topic, and then I will have each of our three panelists introduce themselves. So typically Women in Energy is an event that we hold in person every spring at Duke, and we do have a panel discussion, but we also have a networking reception as well as small group mentoring experiences for students with our panelists. And the reason is, as you know, on average across the energy sector, it's still only about fewer than 30% of the workforce are female. So that varies a little bit from company to company, but it's pretty true across the board, whether we're talking about oil and gas, renewables, energy finance, electric utilities, energy consulting, all of those sectors have a long way to go before we get to gender parity in the industry. And what we know as educators is that one of the best things we can do to help encourage young professionals and students to go into the energy sector is to help them see role models in the industry, hear from executives about their career paths, and envision possible career paths for them. So our panel today, we welcome a perspective of both men and women, obviously. Our panelists are not necessarily going to be able to tell you everything that's happening on gender diversity in the energy sector. That's not the aim. The aim is for them to share a little bit about their story, how their career path evolved, what they love about the industry, and what their advice is for students and young professionals who might be inspired then to consider career paths or continuing on a career path in the energy sector. So we have three terrific panelists, all alums who come from really different backgrounds. So Arsheen Allam is the founder and CEO of GOLeafe. Olivia Eskew is a policy and strategy analyst with Cypress Creek Renewables. And Lauren Shum is the vice president of engineering for Sunforge. So I'm going to ask them to take a few minutes each. We'll go in that order. to just tell us your career story. You know, start with your undergraduate experience, walk us through how you got to where you are today, and tell us a little bit about what your role looks like today. Arsheen, you want to start?
Sure. So I went to NC State University for undergrad, and I chose to study material science and engineering there. And what led me to material science was just growing up, I visited my parents' home countries a lot of India and Pakistan, and I really wanted to try to find a better low-cost clean water solution. So I did a research project during my undergrad on developing low-cost water filters. Ended up patenting those filters, and we do sell those in India, but they ended up being only great for river water or groundwater. And with 97% of the Earth's water in the oceans, you really needed to find something for desalination. So I started doing research again, and found out about this material graphene, which was first discovered in 2004. And MIT had said that it had the potential of being the best desalination technology, but because it was such an expensive material to produce, it was unlikely we would see that product on the market anytime soon. So having been from the carbon research world for several years now, and graphene being nothing but a single layer of carbon, I kind of set out to see if there's a better way to produce it. Fast forward a few years of R&D, we did successfully extract graphene from various carbon sources, and then started to work on this desalination membrane, but kind of got stuck in trying to figure out the best way to embed the graphene material in some sort of substrate. So then meanwhile, we were like, well, there's a lot of applications for graphene, including several energy applications, and that's how we pivoted into that. And we're now working on graphene-based energy storage device, as well as we're using graphene instead of silicon.
And what does your role as CEO look like?
So I do a lot of the research still, but our manufacturing team is in India, so I spend kind of half my time in India, half my time here, just optimizing the graphene production process, as well as treating the graphene in different ways to see if we can increase the storage capacity of it, the life period. But then on the business side of it, so I forgot to mention how I ended up at Fuqua. I decided I actually have no idea how to run a business. So during the second portion of my research, I came to Fuqua, got my MBA, and now I focus on the business side of things also, which includes fundraising and talking to investors and doing different presentations. So I kind of do both now.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to Olivia next. Let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Hey folks, I'm Olivia Eskew. So I work currently at Cypress Creek Renewables as our policy and strategy analyst. But way prior to my career starting at Cypress Creek, I went to UNC, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, have an undergraduate degree in biology with a focus in environmental science. Graduated from Carolina in 2014. And then prior to starting my master's degree at the Nicholas School at Duke, I took 2 years off in between and was serving in Ethiopia with the Peace Corps. I was doing a lot of education work as well as environmental management work that isn't initially necessarily what I signed up for, but ended up doing a lot of pollinator conservation work. And so fast forward a little bit, after my service in Ethiopia, I started at the Nicholas School and decided to focus on a concentration in business and the environment. I was really interested, and still am, obviously, in corporate social responsibility. And the way that kind of all tied together was my master's project at the Nicholas School was focused on pollinator-friendly solar development. So I kind of strung all of my passions together there. And ultimately, I started working with Cypress Creek Renewables on launching our national implementation program for pollinator-friendly solar. So that started in about 2017, and ever since then, the first couple of roles that I've had at Cypress Creek have been kind of self-created. It was a really niche, intricate role, and from I've always worked underneath our development vertical at Cypress Creek. But in addition to managing our pollinator portfolio at Cypress Creek, I now have a more expanded role still within development, but focusing on renewable energy policy and strategy across all of our markets. And so I am now on a team of, as of this week, 5. We're a small team, but we serve as a support across all of our teams within development. So.
Awesome. So when you went back to grad school, what did you imagine you would be doing afterwards?
That's a good question. So when I started at the Nichols School, I wasn't necessarily interested strictly in renewable energy. I was interested in some type of mainly environmental conservation work and agriculture work. And so I knew I wanted to move away from the nonprofit sector after being with the Peace Corps for a while, and I did want to get my feet wet in the private sector. So I was pretty open when I first started. I actually started in coastal environmental management when I first began and quickly changed from that. So I was open to it, but was looking more into the agriculture industry.
Awesome. Great. Yep. How about you, Lauren? Oh, you're muted.
Oops, sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Shum, and I think I'll tell you first what my current role is, and then I'll tell you how I got there, because it was a wild ride. So right now I work at Sunforge. We are a company that makes solar charge controllers, which are power converters that make off-grid solar energy possible. And my job is to coordinate the development of all of our hardware and software, all the hardware and software that goes into our products as our VP of engineering. A fun fact about our company is that Greta Thunberg, you'll know Greta Thunberg, the youth climate activist. So for her transatlantic journey to the UN, she chose our products to power her boat, which was really awesome. And the other fun fact, which will take us back to the beginning here, is that Sunforge actually pioneered the very first maximum power point tracking controller, or MPPT, back in 1998. And when I found this out, I thought that was so crazy, because I remember being in Dr. Stiff Roberts' class at Duke in her solar cell class, learning about maximum power point tracking. And so to like come full circle from learning about it in the classroom to then joining a company that had actually come up with the first commercial product in this space was really, really cool for me. So how I got here. So I graduated from Duke with my electrical engineering degree, bachelor's degree, in 2017. And initially I thought I was going to go do my PhD in material science, because I figured that a lot of the frontiers in the clean tech space are fundamentally materials. And I figured that that was the path to go and get my PhD, work on some technology, then maybe commercialize it later. And as it so happens, this is not the path I took, because what happened was the summer right before I was supposed to start my PhD, and as I had committed, I'd practically signed a lease and everything, I happened to go present some of my undergraduate research at a conference. This is the NAE Grand Challenge Scholars Conference, which I was able to take part of because I was a Grand Challenge Scholar at Duke. And during this conference, I remember seeing Dean Kamen. And if you don't know who Dean Kamen is, he's famous for inventing the first insulin pump, as well as for creating first robotics, as well as inventing the Segway, or those touchscreen Coke freestyle machines that all came out of his company. So he was a really prolific inventor. And when I saw him, I knew I had to say something to him. So I went up to him and for lack of anything better to ask for, I asked him for a selfie. And after that, we had a conversation during which, when he found out that I was an electrical engineer going into a material science degree, he was really curious, because he told me, well, I'm working on this new biomaterials project. We're going to manufacture human organs, and I'm going to need a lot of electrical engineers to help us do that. And I thought, well, that's really cool. Like, do you have any clean tech projects? And he was just so laser focused on, he wanted to, this was like a frontier in industry. It was actually defined under the Obama administration that that regenerative manufacturing was one of the major manufacturing areas going forward. And so after a conversation with him, this ended up with a very spontaneous invitation to join him on his private plane back to his headquarters, where he promised that he would have people ready to interview me by the time I landed. And mind you, I was still heading to a PhD program at this time. So wow. This was, I thought, well, what else can I say? Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I might as well take the ride and go see what happens. So long story short, I ended up being at DECA Research and Development for a couple of years, where I ran the sensor development that was supposed to help automate cell culture process, which is the input for manufacturing biological tissues or organs of any kind. And then the second career jump, which is how I became VP of Engineering at Sunforge, was almost equally spontaneous and serendipitous. I remember one day I was thinking, you know, this is a good detour in biotech, but my passion has always been clean tech. And I thought that I should try and keep tabs on the industry while I was not in it. So I went down to this networking event at Greentown Labs, which is the biggest incubator for clean tech in all of North America. So I drove down one evening and I went to this networking event, and I saw Emily Reichert, the CEO of Greentown, on stage. And I am ashamed to admit that I was surprised that she was a woman. And I'm going to just take a pause here and mention that unconscious bias is real. I, as a woman in technical leadership, had just become so accustomed to seeing only men in these roles that when I encountered another technical woman in leadership, I was, against my will, surprised. So I'm sure we'll touch upon that later. But when I saw her on stage there, I thought I should really talk to her, because this is a role, the role that she has is something that I aspire to ultimately. So we had a conversation, and then some man that I didn't know walks up to our table, and he says, oh, he's complaining about how he can't find any electrical engineers anywhere. He's looking for a VP of engineering, and he just can't find any. And then Emily looks over to me and says, well, I found one right here. There she is. And at this time, I was thinking, oh, well, that's definitely above my pay grade. This is not something that I could apply for. Also, I'm not even looking for a job. I was planning to stay at Deca Research for a while. So I said, oh, you know, good luck finding one. When Emily, then she turns to me and says, well, do you have a resume on you? And I said, no, why? And I still didn't get it, right? Because I was thinking, like, this is not something I'm going to apply to. And she says, well, I think you should send it to Jared. And I thought, oh, I guess I should. So then I submitted, because she gave me permission to, I felt okay submitting an application for this job that seemed well above my pay grade. And ultimately that landed me here today. So that's my wild story.
Yeah. So a lot of us have serendipity as a factor in our career stories, right? But now this question for Lauren or Olivia, you maybe didn't necessarily start out on this particular path, but now that you're in the energy sector, do you think you'll stay? What's exciting or compelling about the energy space to you?
Well, for me, I've always wanted to, oh, sorry.
We'll go with Lauren first.
Okay. I guess for me, I've always wanted to work in clean energy, or I've had what I call career hypotheses throughout my life. And at first I wanted to work in sustainability, and I thought, what are the avenues working in sustainability? This was maybe back in middle school, high school. And then ultimately I narrowed it down to energy, because it dawned on me that we cannot have modern life and modern society without energy. You think about the computers we're using now, the lights that are always on. There's so much about our modern lives that would simply not be possible. And if we are unable to decouple our energy consumption from our carbon emissions, then we're headed, towards a bad path. And I figured that my personal greatest potential for greatest impact would be in developing technologies to help the environment, because technology was something I've always been interested in, and so was sustainability and environmental issues.
How about you, Olivia?
Yeah, so I have really full intentions of staying within the clean energy space, specifically with my role now. A lot of times I just kind of, at the end of the day, can't believe how much has changed in one day. And while at the start of one day, it may seem like, okay, I'm working on this project and this state, but specifically speaking towards renewable energy policy and development, it's constantly changing. It's extremely dynamic. Yes, we're going through quite a bit of changes right now with the current pandemic, but just generally speaking within the renewable energy sector itself and the way it's structured and the relationships that you build and the communities that we work in, whether that be at the local level to the state level, honestly, into the federal jurisdictions and things like that as well. A lot of times it feels like I'm going back to graduate school, because I will get a new project or a new topic to try to get up to speed on, and it can be quite difficult and challenging, but something that I think there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of great work to be done that's really fulfilling and rewarding.
Excellent. I think, for many years, the energy sector, especially big parts of it, oil and gas and utilities, were seen as this really slow moving, stodgy kind of space. And now all of a sudden, we see so much transformation happening in energy across the globe, which makes for a really exciting and dynamic space to be in. So I think that where once it wasn't thought of as the most, I would say, innovative sector that one could go into after graduation, now all of a sudden there's just a ton of work to be done, a lot of really meaningful work, and it's a really exciting space too. So Arsheen, you not only work with the energy sector, you're also a female founder, which makes you really rare. What's it like being a female founder, and has, you know, we know that the community of entrepreneurs and investors has traditionally also had a gender imbalance. Has that played a role in how you go about developing your company, and have you faced any challenges on that front?
Sure. So at the beginning of kind of this path of talking to investors and meeting different people at industry conferences, a lot of times when someone would come up to my booth or just meet me in the hallways, you could tell that they were kind of dismissive of what I was saying. And at the beginning it was very discouraging that just based on what I look like, they would kind of dismiss it. But very quickly when you start talking, they flip and they actually start to hear what you're saying, and they're very impressed. And that gave me a lot of confidence to not be afraid of when people would dismiss you at the beginning, because I know that I have certain experiences and certain knowledge, and I'm happy to share it, and people do recognize it. So it doesn't intimidate me anymore. When I speak to investors, it's been interesting. Actually, you hear about a lot of strange experiences that women have in the workplace, and I'm like, well, maybe it's sensationalized, but it's actually really not in the investor world. I get called cute all the time, and I'm a grown woman. There's a guy who barely ever uses my name. He just kind of uses these kind of nicknames. I don't talk to that group anymore because there's just not the respect there. I've had people tell me I have a beautiful voice. So those kind of comments, they really do get to you even after having heard them a lot. But I've learned that there are so many investors out there, and if someone can't give you that basic respect of using your name rather than a nickname, I just kind of toss them aside and move on to the next one. And I think finding the right investor, it's kind of like a marriage, and you really want it to be mutually respectful. So I don't really make allowances for that anymore, and it's worked out fine so far.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that we've come such a long way, but still have a long way to go sometimes in some conversations. How about for any of you? I mean, do you have other thoughts? I liked your story, Arsheen, about how you can build credibility with your expertise to break past those sort of initial first impression. For any of you, do you have other strategies or advice for students or young professionals who are trying to get past any kind of gender bias that they experience? Anything has it been an issue for you in your own career, or thoughts on best ways to kind of mitigate some of that?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question directly, Katie, but I can speak a little bit to that. I didn't necessarily have this issue in the hiring process per se. The way it happened for me was I was actually connected with a Nicholas School alum who also happened to be working at Cypress Creek, and that evolved through my master's project. So I was very fortunate in that regard. I will say that if you are potentially looking to intern with a company or looking to work full time for that company, there are, from my perspective and my experience at least, a lot of really great ways to get involved both internally and externally within companies. So for example, at Cypress Creek, we have like a women's internal networking group there where we do monthly luncheons and those sort of things where we talk about some of these conversations. So I was part of helping get that jump started. That's an internal perspective. From an external standpoint, for example, with RISE North Carolina, that's one of the things I'm working on. So I think there are a lot of really good existing organizations or outlets or ways to kind of discuss some of these more difficult topics. But in terms of the actual hiring process in and of itself, I can't really speak to that. I don't know if Arsheen or Lauren
Can you add a little more about RISE and what you're doing?
Yes, sure can. So RISE North Carolina, feel free to go check it out after this. It's WRISE, not RISE like you would think. It is a national level organization. So myself and Patty Wright at Pinegate Renewables are the chapter directors for North Carolina. Basically what it looks like is there are a number of states across the country that already have chapters, and it is an opportunity to network and have resources within not specifically just clean energy, but the renewable energy larger space to promote a future of clean energy. And now that's not to say that only women are welcome to join our events. We do things such as have guest speakers and webinars and things like that. It is definitely open to both men and women because women are just half of the conversation, right? So we're trying to open up that dialogue. But there are a lot of really great resources also for students. We offer peer-to-peer mentoring. I believe I was a part of that process actually when I was a student too. But feel free to check it out on LinkedIn as well as RISE National's website. And then of course you can contact me directly if you'd like to get involved. And there are, if you are a student listening, there are student membership opportunities as well as for young professionals and anywhere really in your career. And again, that is not specific to just renewable energy professionals. If you're trying to make a career transition or you're interested in any aspect of renewable energy, feel free to take a look.
Thanks, Olivia. This is Stacy Peterson. Just to say that we dropped the link in the chat box for you all.
Thank you.
So Lauren, do you
want to follow up on that?
Yeah, either your own experience or just what you think the industry could do or is doing well in respect to encouraging gender diversity.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's a lot of thoughts there. I guess the first thing I was going to say was I actually also resonate a lot with Arsheen's experience. I noticed that people, after you start talking, they start paying attention, they start treating you with more respect, and they give your ideas and thoughts more weight. And I think that the way that I've come up with to deal with possibly being dismissed at first is you just have to be bold enough to make the first move. I'm just thinking back now to that first experience that sort of launched my career, which is my first interaction with Dean Kamen. And I think if I hadn't made the move to go up and introduce myself and say hi, which is scary, right? Because he's a famous person that I'd looked up to for a while, then I would never have been where I am today. And I think that if you have to trust yourself that you know what you're talking about and your experience and you have skills, and if you can lean on that and use it to develop the confidence you need to reach out to people preemptively and not wait for people to come to you, I think that that's a good tool for coping with possibly being overlooked. With regards to what people can do to help achieve more diversity in this industry, I am going to approach this from the woman in tech perspective for two reasons. One is that it's my lived experience, and the other is that based on the research that I've read online, it seems that the gender gap in energy is largely due to the gender gap in STEM itself. So it's appropriate to address it from this standpoint. I will actually, I can pull up a couple of stats for you since we're all on our computers now. So in the in the EU, the energy sector workforce is composed of mainly men, 77.9% men, and women are only 22.1%. And the reason that they think this is because a lot of energy jobs are STEM-based, and even though 42.3% of women complete tertiary education versus 33.6% of men, so more women than men complete tertiary education. In science and technology particularly, only 11% of women get a STEM degree versus 22% of men. So even though there's more women pursuing degrees, there's fewer women pursuing STEM degrees. And I think the reason for this, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've broken it down into 4 buckets. The first one is unconscious bias, which I touched on a little bit earlier. But I think it's human nature to want to pattern match, right? We're programmed that way. And if you see primarily men in a certain field, you're going to think that field is maybe more for men than not, is one way that you might pattern match. And the other way is the other way around. When you're trying to hire, you're going to hire people that are more like you. So if it's an industry that's already predominantly male, then it's likely to, in hiring new people, also hire predominantly male people. The second thing is systemic bias, which is everything from family leave to work hour requirements. And it's not equitable for sure that women have to shoulder, disproportionately shoulder the larger burden in terms of household duties and reproductive labor. But the reality of it is that that is the case now. And given that, I think that policies really should take this into account. So the United States, I think, there's 40 countries in the world that have paid leave, family leave for both, most of them actually have it for both men and women, and all of them at least have it for a woman. And the United States doesn't have guaranteed paid family leave for either, which is crazy because we're supposed to be a very progressive country. But because we lack paid family leave, and because there's a lot of work requirements for, like, for example, at my old company, everybody there was a workaholic, and if you couldn't keep up with the hours, it was more difficult for you to be productive at the pace that they wanted you to, right? So these things, I think, are systemic biases that, given the fact that right now it is reality that women disproportionately shoulder these burdens of raising families, it just contributes to hindering them as they try and push forward in their professional lives. The third bucket that I thought of was representation, which kind of, a lot of these buckets sort of lead together. But if you grow up and you don't see women who are in tech or, you know, in energy careers, then you won't think that that's for you. And the other thing is that if it is, I'll tell a really quick story about when I was in 5th grade, I won the school-wide math competition, and I didn't even know it was a competition, but at the end of the year, they handed me a trophy. And when I was in 6th grade, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm good at math. I should join the math team. I walked into the math team meeting the very first day they met, and I literally walked right back out because the entire room was full of only boys. There was not a single female in the entire room. And here's the thing, like, I won that award. I wasn't unqualified to be there, but I just felt so uncomfortable that I didn't want to participate. And so representation is really important for all of those reasons. And the last thing, and this is sort of a newer hypothesis that I have, but the last thing is that I think you just don't know what you don't know. And what I mean by that is that even after I got my electrical engineering degree, I didn't even know what all the things were that I could do with it. I would never have guessed that I could contribute meaningfully to a biology project, right? My degree not being in biology, but it was definitely, if I had studied biology, I would not have been able to do my last job, which is all about automation and sensor development. So that's one thing. And then you think about a step before that, which is even getting to that degree. How do you even know if that degree is just not in your span of possibilities, how are you ever going to get there? I have a friend that I went to Duke with who in high school, he was really good at social studies. And so when he got to Duke, he thought, oh, maybe I'll be public policy or econ. And he eventually chose econ. And as he was taking the math classes that were required for econ, he thought, wow, I actually really like math, but he never knew it before because he didn't have a good math teacher in high school. So if you don't get exposed early on to the range of possibilities that are out there for you, you're ultimately not going to pursue. I think that this because of natural biases that are out there in society, fewer women get exposed to things like STEM than men, and because they don't see that as within their possibility, they don't end up pursuing it.
Yeah, those are all really terrific points. I think we could have whole dialogues on each one of those. Certainly on the representation point, you know, one of our priorities in the Women in Energy Initiative here at Duke is not just to host this once a year event, but to also make sure that we are bringing, equal numbers of women to speak at the energy conference or to speak in our other extracurricular events for students, so that our young female professionals have as much opportunity to kind of see that representation reflected in industry as our young male professionals do. So I do want, before we wrap up, I want to ask each of our panelists about advice for students, but I want to save a few minutes right now for questions from the audience. So if you have a question, you can either type it in the chat box or you can raise your hand right now and we can put you on the camera. And if you don't know how to raise your hand, you can unmute yourself and just jump in. None of those options work. Okay, here's a great question. How can we close gaps for women of color? This is something we think about a lot too, because the representation of anyone of color in the energy sector is even probably a smaller percentage at these companies, in many of them, than women. So do any of you think that the strategies would be different in any way?
I'm just speaking from personal experience. I think that it starts with you as an individual. So by going down the path that I have, I feel like that has begun. I'm usually the only visibly Muslim woman at any conference, let alone like the main speaker. So what I do at a community level is there's quite a large Muslim community within Raleigh-Durham. So I do mentor a number of high school girls who are thinking about careers in STEM, and that's been rewarding for me and hopefully for them as well. And now a few of them are applying to college and they are reaching out to me and asking about different engineering degrees. So that's been good.
I think that's a great point. I think certainly there's a lot the industry can do. There's a lot that those of us who want to see the change in the industry can do as well. So, sometimes I'm asked to speak on a panel and I know that it's because there's 3 men on the panel already, and they're asking me, and even sometimes saying outright, we need a woman on the panel. And I, every time I can, I say, yes, you do need a woman on the panel. Yes, I will do it because you need a woman on the panel. So I think that, it's sometimes a shouldering like a bigger burden to then have to represent, so both diversity and gender. But I think that it's one way that we can contribute to actually seeing that change happen in the industry. Let me ask another question from our chat room. This is a good one. What can men do to be better allies in the workplace? Does anyone have a thought on that?
I can give a little bit of feedback there just from this is Olivia. From my own experience, I think I did speak a little bit to the Rise North Carolina organization I'm a part of and helping lead, and that has been really nice to also see men being involved there, asking very similar questions, how can they be better allies and things like that. I think one of the biggest first steps is just to listen and be open and receptive to what some of your female colleagues may have concerns with. Another thing too that I thought was really interesting is, and I've noticed it now over the years, but it's something that seems so silly and simple, but when you're sitting around and maybe having a meeting with your colleagues and a number of folks around the table, a lot of times in terms of who's going to be the note taker, we've talked about this a few times, it ends up being just like doing menial tasks isn't falling onto the female at the table and things like that. So just always putting yourself first and asking to volunteer for a lot of activities that sometimes seem to always fall on the woman at the table. Whether there's multiple women at that table or not, I found myself many times just thinking like, oh yeah, I'll do it, no big deal. But I stopped doing that recently as well. And then one other thing that I've caught myself doing, and I hear it all the time, and I know it's very common, is to say things like, hey guys, or trying to use like more gender neutral words and things like that in conversation when you are in a room full of both men and women has been something that I've tried to keep my eye out for as well. But just a few small things like that.
Thank you.
I completely second what Olivia said. And I think that the practice goes into hiring as well. Right now, a while back, we were trying to hire a new electrical engineer, and I kept noticing that some people on our team would say the engineering guy, or like, they would always use the word guy when they really meant to say engineer, like the electrical guy or like the mechanical guy. And I think that that language is harmful because it genders something that really shouldn't be gendered. And that's just another small mental signal that women should not be in this field, which is not the case at all. The other thing I think that men can do is just, and this comes back to unconscious bias again, and everybody has it. I mean, I have it, and I've been working in the gender equity space for years now, right? And so I'm just thinking about one situation where a couple of colleagues of mine made a kind of sexist comment, and I called them out on it. And instead of just being like, oh, sorry, like, didn't mean that, they kind of try to defend themselves for a while. And I think it would be really helpful if men, instead of trying to defend themselves, like just admit like, okay, I'm sorry, like I recognize that this may not be the best thing to say, and just like in your own mind own up to the fact that you have unconscious biases. Like nobody thinks you're trying to be sexist on purpose. People know that you're a nice person, but people make mistakes all the time. And I think that if you can just recognize that for yourself, that's helpful.
We've had another good question come in. I'm going to ask this one to Arsheen. Do you feel ever the imposter syndrome, and do you have any tactics to overcome that?
Yeah, I feel it all the time. But I have a very simple tactic that I use, and I haven't tried asking other people to use it and see if it works. I just think of everybody else, no matter who it is or how big the conference is. Every single person there is there because they want to learn something. They don't know everything. So if you have something to share based on your experience, share it, and whoever values it will. And at the end of the day, everyone there is just another human being. So I really don't look at titles and get intimidated by what company someone may or may not have worked at and how long they've been in the industry, because they may have more experiences than me, but they may not have the same experience as me. So I still feel like I have something to offer.
Excellent. That's good advice. So we are right at 3:45. I want to ask one last question for those of you in our audience who can stay. Terrific. I would love to go and ask each one of our panelists to share your words of advice. So setting the state of the world and the pandemic and the economy aside, what's your advice to someone who is a student right now? Maybe they're graduating now, maybe they're graduating in another year or two. As you reflect on your own career path, what are your pearls of wisdom for them upon graduation? Who wants to start? Olivia, you want to start?
Love to. I would say this kind of relates back to the whole imposter syndrome and the mantra that we've kind of had with confidence and just going for it. I think one of the biggest things I'm grateful for my graduate school career, and things that I'm grateful for that I took advantage of, was just all of the opportunities to network. And I know you hear it time and time again, go to this network opportunity or do that. And it can seem exhausting and daunting at times, but I cannot harp enough how important it is to have relationships with those in the industry. Once you are in the industry, it's a very small and close-knit place. So just talking with people and coming, doing those informational interviews, but then doing the follow-ups and really showing that you care and that you do want to learn more. I know it is a tough time right now with the way the world is going, but it will get better, and being able to maintain and foster those relationships, not only while you're in graduate school and perhaps once you start a career, but continue to foster those relationships, because you'd be surprised when opportunities or new outcomes kind of come along later down the road as well.
Great advice. How about you, Arsheen? Any other words of advice?
Yeah, I would say to especially the current students, don't limit your career search to just your degree. And I really loved Lauren's story where she didn't necessarily even consider that she would be qualified for a certain position because it was above her pay grade. And then I think another job that you had was not according to your degree. And even the work that I do now that I've moved into the energy side of things, my material science degree is useful, but I have learned so much more just doing my job or doing my research than I ever did in my 4 years of undergrad. And I greatly value my undergrad degree and my MBA degree that I went back and got. But they are just foundations. So as long as you're willing to learn, don't limit yourself to just what degree you have on the wall.
Great. And how about you, Lauren?
So as I said before, I'm a really big believer in career hypotheses. And I think that what students now can do, or even if you're graduated already, your trajectory isn't set. And the way that I go about this is I think I have an overarching goal. And right now I want to figure out the way I can be most impactful in the fight against climate change. And how can I possibly get there? And so all of the experiences you have, those are like experiments that you're running to figure out what you like and to figure out whether that's actually an area you can have impact in. And so as you go through your career, I would be very careful about thinking, at least if you're a student now, pick internships that are very different from each other so that you can get a wider diversity of experiences and figure out more closely what you like. And then as you start going out into the work world, just keep evaluating what you're currently doing against your career goal and just constantly keep checking in on whether they're aligned.
Terrific. Those are great words of advice from all of our panelists. I know we're running out of time. I'm going to ask Jacob to put up our last slide with the contact info for the Energy Initiative and the Edge Center. I hope that all of you will stay in touch with us, join our mailing list if you haven't already. I also know that we will be sending you a post-event survey. So if you enjoyed this and you really want the dialogue to continue, or there's a topic that we touched on today that you would like us to explore in more detail, or you have other suggestions for events that you'd like to see us do virtually, we would love for you to fill out that survey in addition to what you thought of today's event. Give us some ideas and feedback for the future. We're really excited about how many of you could join us today. I am especially grateful to our panelists who made the time amidst all of the chaos and the remote work headaches to join us. And I want to say thank you to Jacob and Stacy, as well as everybody over at the Duke University Energy Initiative. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to staying connected.
Thank you.